So this must have something to do with the base, because it certainly all got washed out as soon as I got past one. You strum more than once or on top of that, and the next thing you know, it's foggy. Okay, I know this isn't very interesting. Oh gosh, I just like doing that. This is fun. Hammer, hammer, pulling. Okay, so I'll stop. I'm using the Franken amp. I'm loving this amp. I got it hooked up to my pedal. I love that amp. It only cost me $5. My brother brought over his orange amp, and I kind of his orange amp is much nicer sounding. But this thing is equally as powerful, and it's using those C batteries, like 4 of these C batteries in there. All right, to work. Alrighty, so we still have some dabs we are working with here. The lovely, oh, what are we? Chem Dog. Keep wanting to say Blue Monster. Where are we? Right? Absolutely wonderful medication that I can feel immediate relief from. And last night, for some reason, I had really bad hot flashes. I haven't had those really bad hot flashes in a... I mean, I've had some, like, little ones, and you just go, oh, I'm having a hot flash, you go back to sleep. This time I was like, no, this is miserable. I'm just fanning now, you know, to get the moisture out from between the sheets is horrible. You know, it's horrible. I was telling my cannabis doctor, it's like you're turning into a fucking jellyfish right next to your husband. I don't know how husbands can deal with, you know, I was sleeping in a dry, warm bed. Now I'm sleeping next to a mermaid who's transformed, and it's like the ice water. Ice water in your bed. It's terrible. Take out my scraggly buds. We still got, ooh, lots of this morning glory left. There you go. There's a good shot. So much nicer than the buds I grew in the garage. But, you know, experiment. I have my other 2 plants, because you're allowed 6, out in the backyard. And they seem to be much more, I don't know, thickening up a lot more with the buds. They seem to be, hopefully they don't stop in the middle or do something crazy. Cheers. Now the news. There is still talk about the DEA and how the DEA has not said anything. Okay, so people are starting to play this game of, well, what's really going on? I'm saying the longer the jury's out, the probably more in favor this is going to be for us. Because they got to figure out how to send it, how to make it work, how to spell it out to all of us so it sounds like they're winning when they're not. Okay. All right, so I saw a tweet by Tom Engel that was talking about this and said that maybe apparently the FDA made a recommendation that this should be rescheduled, and the reaction to that was that some big pharma company that already has a synthetic form of medical marijuana in pill form, not synthetic like what happened in New York, but same kind of concept. You're taking something that a plant does naturally, and now you're doing it in a lab. Who knows what sort of mischief can happen, you know? Okay, so they complained to the DEA, and they've been lobbying them, saying we don't want you to reschedule because this would hurt our opportunity to try to take hold of the market, because they'd like to be able to sell this too, but of course in a pill form and in a bottle, and you know how all that goes. Then it becomes more an attachment to Big Pharma. So when you think about Big Pharma marijuana, they want, if Big Pharma gets involved in it, they want it in a pill. Not, they're going to sell you weed. That whole model does not work for them. Just like for the cigarette companies, the whole model of vaporizers does not work for them. That's why you constantly hear how vaporizers are leading children into more tobacco use. That's probably not true. It's probably the exact opposite. And knowing the way things always seem to work out lately, mission accomplished, it's probably not true. Oh, I'm not a fan of this particular torch. This one takes forever to heat things up. I'll have to set it here. Okay. So the second thing is that Gavin Newsom is going around still promoting AUMA. AUMA, which is now has detractors. And one of those detractors is Dianne Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein and Ted Grassley at the very same time that she is saying she does not like recreational marijuana and does not think it should be, legalized, at the very same moment, apparently, announces that they're going to have a hearing about medical marijuana and its efficacy. This sounds like bargaining. Isn't this one of the symbols of, or not the symptoms of grieving or something like that, or dealing with death? Is that, first you deny, then you do all these other things, and then you're bargaining at some point. This sounds like bargaining to me. This sounds like, oh, well, we'll give you this, but not that. No, we want the entire enchilada, right? So I'm having to set this up so you can't see. Stupid thing. Torchifies this thing. I'm wearing shorts today. I'm going to the Ave. I'm going to go to the Avenue and go to one of my favorite thrift stores and look around. I love to do that. Okay, so I don't need to read to you about Lieutenant Gavin Newsom pushing in Santa Cruz, pitching Prop 64 to legalize marijuana. Everybody's pretty on board with this. But what I am excited to read you, I thought you were over there for a second. What I am excited to read to you is how, remember those cops that did the bus not too long ago at the dispensary and they were eating edibles? 3 of them are no longer working for that police force. And the police department did not want to admit that they fired them around April and May, back near when this happened. So let me read this to you. I realized I should dab. Yeah, the torch has been going a long time, all through me reading that story. No, I just filmed this, and then I stopped, and then I went, you know what, duh, you're trying to take a dab here, like on camera, and you just shut it off, stupid. I don't like this torch. It takes forever for this torch to do anything that I could see is actually, I have to imagine it's heating it up. I'm sorry, I'm not wasting a dab. I want to know this thing's glowy a little bit. Come on, you. Hold it back. I hear people out there. Mentally, I can hear them. Hold the torch further back and hit the edge of the... I know. My own brain is telling me this. I hear everybody on Earth. You're doing it wrong. Okay, this stupid thing has got to be hot by now. This one at least locks, you know, and they all seem to fuck up in one way or another. I don't know what's going on there. But all these cheap Chinese torches, $5 torches, seem to have some glitch. Success. Usually, actually, I'm not using this anymore. Now I use that N. That thing is so, you just put your dabs in there and sit there and keep it, you know, nursing on your energy source like a little vampire. You know, the vaporizer, like it's nursing on a battery I got in my backpack right now for when we go out later. But I love the thing. I did not think I would like it, but I have to say that there are good things about it that are above the stupid things like it's a battery that's going to be constantly sucking off some outlet in your house. All right. Now I'm actually going to read this story to you. Having this conversation with my brother, I got interrupted before I started reading. We're talking about my guitar. He cut that piece of wood, which is a big rectangular piece of wood I found at the thrift store I showed you. And he cut it corner to corner, and he's joined it. But it's going to be slightly arch top. So I was saying, that sounds great. I told him that I forgot I'm still waiting on the back plate. But I got, I think, all the parts together now. He's typing a message. We're using Steam. You can use Steam to talk to each other like phone calls. You can message each other about stuff. You give up on typing to me? It's like typing, then not typing. Okay, so he says we don't need the plate yet. We can still lay out and start on the neck and face plate. Okay, good. Right. I'm telling them that we'll see him on for card day, for our card playing day. Typing message. I think this is so fun. My husband had to go visit relatives in Canada, and I thought, oh my God, I'll be separated for for a week. I'm gonna freak out, and then we actually did FaceTime and we were playing games together and stuff. It was just like he was here. It was great. It was really great. It was just a little lag. Okay, we're done with our combo. Now back to what I was supposed to be doing. OCweekly.com. Santa Ana Police Department fires officers in pot video case. Thursday, July 14, 2016. Sky High Cops. 3 Santa Ana police officers caught on tape last year destroying cameras, throwing darts, eating what looked like pot edibles, and insulting a disabled cannabis patient have been fired. A Santa Ana Police Department SAPD spokesperson has confirmed. Brandon Matthew Sontig, Nicole Lynn Huez, and George Arroyo are no longer employed by SAPD, according to Captain Anthony Brichanan, I think, an SAPD spokesperson who declined further comment, saying he was unable to discuss personal matters. As the Weekly reported last month, the 3 officers recently pled not guilty to charges of vandalism and petty theft of what prosecutors alleged were candy bars, stemming from the notorious May 26, 2015 raid of the Sky High Holistic Marijuana Dispensary in Santa Ana. They were last reported to have been on paid leave pending administrative appeal. But according to Brichanan, this officer, Arroyo's last day on the job was April 20th, 2016. Insert 420 joke here. While both Quez and Sontag left the department on May 6, after raiding Sky High, arresting several individuals, and dismantling all the video surveillance equipment they could find inside the dispensary. The officers apparently thought they had found all the cameras, but a backup surveillance system with cameras inside each room showed officers joking about kicking pot activist Marla James, an amputee confined to a wheelchair, who has since sued Santa Ana in her NUMB, NUMB, I don't know what that is. Then after retrieving, they were going to kick her in her nub. That's right. The lady said she was going to kick her in her nub. Then, after retrieving what appears to be pot edibles from the back room, the officers began snacking on the treats, including one officer who joked that he felt kind of lightheaded. 3 officers who no longer work for the SAPD were never drug tested, however, but after a lengthy internal affairs investigation, prosecutors charged them with misdemeanor counts of petty theft and vandalism. If convicted, they faced between 6 months and a year in prison. You know, what this article doesn't say is that during that raid, they also talked about the judge that had written the warrant for the raid and how they used to party with him and he would drink and drive and think that was cool. And that this was all kind of backdoor dealings and stuff. And why isn't somebody looking at the mayor of that town and the judge that was writing these warrants for these competing dispensaries? Hello, Canada. Toronto. Do you have a mayor that's sending out task force to crack down on people and saying it's because there's too much of them and they're giving them to kids and blah, blah, blah? Look out. Is he invested somehow in a dispensary himself? Look out. He may just be taking out the competition. Okay, so interesting how, the worm has turned in Santa Ana. Santa Ana is one of the few jurisdictions that actually allows dispensaries. It's just whose dispensaries do they allow? And that's the kind of thing that we're going to have to just work out. We're going to have to work out, who's allowed to have what businesses and who profits from keeping other people out. Oops, turf war. And what brings me to the subject of turf wars is actually this story out of Vice News, which I found very interesting, and it's called, "Why Did Russia Shut Down Its Version of the DEA?" Here's the little snippet. The story of Putin's decision to dissolve Russia's Federal Drug Control Service involves turf wars, a tanking economy, and allegations of rampant corruption. So I'll read this to you. ViceNews.com. Why did Russia shut down its version of the DEA? July 6, 2016. Early on the morning of January 1st, 2013, a brawl erupted in eastern Siberia. The identities of the combatants, a 27-year-old special agent with Russia's Federal Drug Control Service, FSKN, and a 50-year-old police major, indicated it was no ordinary New Year's scuffle. Investigators later said the melee, which left the younger man hospitalized with a traumatic brain injury, was provoked when FSKN agents searched the police official's son for drugs. Although the incident was apparently isolated, the fight was symbolic of the long-standing rivalry between Russia's Interior Ministry, which oversees the country's police, and the FSKN. This past April, President Vladimir Putin abruptly ended conflict by abolishing the FSKN, a shocking move that would be roughly equivalent to President Barack Obama shutting down the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA. Shades of things to come. Nearly 3 months later, Putin's reasons for doing away with FSKN are still unclear. The agency was perpetually embroiled in turf wars with other Russian state security forces, and its former director, a longtime Putin ally, has been accused of rampant corruption and involvement with a Russian mafia operation in Spain. But regardless of why it happened, the decision will likely have global ramifications. Russia is a key link in the so-called narcotics superhighway that funnels heroin to Afghanistan, from Afghanistan, to the Western Europe. And a recent surge in domestic drug use has led to soaring rates of HIV infections across the country, a crisis that could eventually spill across the border to other countries in Asia and Eastern Europe. Alexander Mikhailov, former head of the FSKN Department and Interagency Relations, who supports the transfer of the drug services functions to the Interior Ministry, said the move will likely cause a temporary breakdown in drug-fighting efforts. Now there will be problems with drug dealing and use, but later it will get better as the ministry settles into its expanded role. Activists who work with drug users in Russia say it's unlikely that the FSKN's dissolution will soften the country's draconian drug policies. Opioids, substitutions, treatments like methadone, which have been widely adopted in Western countries, have effectively been banned in Russia, and little social outreach work is done to prevent drug use. The only thing we can hope for is that imprisonment under the narcotics laws will decrease, since the army of narcotic police, who feed themselves exclusively by catching ordinary drug-dependent people, has been shrunken significantly, said Anaya Saran, head of the Andrei Royalkov Foundation, the only group doing harm reduction outreach to drug users in Moscow. Many people worked honestly, but many others started to cooperate with drug structures. The fall of the Iron Curtain in 1991 opened Russia to the international narcotics trade, especially opioids from Afghanistan and Central Asia. The 1990s also saw the rise of the Russian mafia and widespread government corruption. Drug lords were often protected by a Kreischa or RUF made up of corrupt officials within the police and security services. The FSKN was founded by presidential decree in 2003 in response to the growing drug problem. That year, 4 million Russians, about 3% of the population, were using some type of drug, according to the FSKN. 30% were using heroin. The creation of the FSKN was in response to real threats that exist in society. The growth in drug addiction rapidly expanded drug distribution, and most of all, the corruption of the police who worked on this. Mikhailov said, many personal worked honestly, but many others started to cooperate with drug structures, so no success could be expected there. In other words, okay, many people worked honestly within the systems, but too many pariahs saw opportunity and they tore the system to shreds. Yeah, It doesn't matter what your good intentions are. If the structure is flawed and allows people to abuse it and you ignore that, your good intentions are wasted. The FSKN grew to include 40,000 employees, and its first director eventually clashed with the head of the FSB, the spy agency that replaced the KGB after the fall of the Soviet Union. To resolve the situation, Putin dismissed the head of both agencies in 2008, appointing one of his oldest allies, former top FSB official Viktor Ivanov, I'm not going to be able to say these names, to head the anti-drug service. The colorless bureaucrat Ivanov wielded significant influence over Kremlin appointees after Putin became president, and as head of the FSKN, Ivanov oversaw a more headlined approach to Russia's drug problem. In 2010, the presidential order outlined a harsher policy to tackle tolerance of drugs in Russia by imprisoning users and subjecting them to social pressure. You only have to think a minute to realize that when drug officials and doctors get a strong message from the state that drug use should not be tolerated, the only response to users is hatred, stigma, and discrimination, said Mikhail Glitchnykov, a Russian lawyer who works for the Canadian HIV/AIDS Legal Network. Critics have said that FSKN was focusing more on low-level users than traffickers. In one particular outrageous case, a family of bakers from the city of Voronezh were sentenced to 8 years in prison for large-scale drug trafficking because they used poppy seeds to make traditional pastries. Even as Russia's prison population has gone down, the number of prisoners convicted of drug crimes has vastly increased, and 3/4 of them have been convicted of possession of trafficking in small amounts, Sarong said. While FSKN agents cracked down on low-level drug use, the agency's leaders were allegedly helping one of Russia's most notorious gangs smuggle cocaine and laundry money. Before his death by radiation poisoning in 2006, former FSB agent Alexander Vitinoka, authored a report that linked Ivanov and his right-hand man at the FSKN, Nikolai Aluov, to the powerful Tambov gang. Tambov. I don't know how to pronounce that either. Which was allegedly involved in shipping cocaine from Colombia to Western Europe via St. Petersburg. When drug officials and doctors get a strong message, okay, we read that already. In May 2016, a Spanish court issued a warrant for Aluov's arrest, accusing him of helping the Tambov gang infiltrate the highest level of Russian government and business. Ivanov admitted Aluov was in contact with the gang leaders, but said it was only to receive operational useful information. They would put money in your pocket. Denying the other accusations, he declined a request for comment from Vice News. Putin dissolved the FSKN just days after Aluov arrest warrant was issued. The move came as part of an overall restructuring that also moved the Interior Ministry's riot police and special forces over to a new National Guard, placing them under federal rather than regional control. The Federal Migration Service was also disbanded. In a quickly deleted Facebook post that the FSKN later denied, he had written. Ivanov apparently suggested political intrigues were to blame, arguing the mistaken decision to disband the FSKN was made under pressure from people motivated by non-governmental interests. Still, the FSKN's liquidation may have been tied to questions of efficacy and cost rather than scandal. Russian media reported on a draft decree to dissolve the FSKN last year, and with the economy in recession, the government announced it would cut its budget by 10%. Some reports said Russia could save 30 billion rubles, about 465 million a year without the FSKN. Which was viewed by some as redundant because the Interior Minister also investigates drug cases. The pie is getting smaller, said analyst Alexei Makarkin about the FSKN's demise. Earlier, when there was economic growth and success, it was big enough for everyone. Now it's smaller, and there's not enough for everyone. And sharks gather. And the role of an agency's efficacy and responsibility is increased, and the demands are increased. You don't produce, you don't survive. Although 4,000 to 27,000 FSKN employees will reportedly transfer over to the Interior Ministry, opinions differ widely on how the restructuring will affect Russia's drug problem. Glokchenko said that Interior Ministry might be less likely than the FSKN, to go after low-level drug users to boost satisfaction and justification its existence. Okay. He also noted that the Interior Ministry has been slightly less opposed to harm reduction than the FSKN. Other activities like Sarong aren't as hopeful. The country's drug policy isn't changing, she said, and its repressive function will simply be transferred to the shoulders of the Interior Ministry. Yeah, they probably won't be able to shoulder it. Vice News, watch the Vice News documentary, The Rise of Mexican Black Tar. So if you'd like to see that, you can go there. So, of course, how does this reflect on marijuana and the DEA and everything in the United States or the United Kingdom or Canada? Okay, or Mexico, for that matter. Well, obviously, these guys did not get rid of this DEA version, their drug task force people, because of corruption, because of money laundering, and because of helping gangs to give people drugs. No, they didn't really care about that at all. That probably keeps the masses divided and conquered. But that mission is too fucking expensive and produces too few results, and now too many negatives for them to invest it in any longer. And isn't this a horrible, truth of our existence? We always had the argument. It is not difficult to argue that you are being absolutely ridiculous by imposing such draconian laws on simple marijuana users or drug users, period. Okay? But that's not what moves governments. Notice what moves governments? Lack of money. If you put that pressure and that argument that they are wrong in at the right moment, and the right chain of events happen, you can win. But it was not the argument alone that brought us to this place. It was a lot of different things, and our opponents had to help to some degree. They had to cook up the ridiculous drug war. They had to fuck up the ridiculous drug war. And where did they fuck it up? I will say, Ronald Reagan ignored the AIDS crisis and was, tough on crime and dare and all this kind of stuff. Well, by ignoring the AIDS crisis, then the AIDS patients had no choice but to turn to medical marijuana and found it to be effective. You basically turned the laboratory over to them, and you allowed them to prove that the federal government is lying about medical marijuana, and that draws double attention to not only AIDS crisis or the issue with the homosexuality in our culture, but also marijuana. Marijuana's tagging along. Now here comes Black Lives Matter, where actually the whole marijuana prohibition originated, was with racism. And we come home to this argument and say, well, here you can see Trayvon Martin. You can see cases. You know, Black Lives Matter, I read or heard that started after the Trayvon Martin case. Well, during that case, I was like, I'm a stoner. I'm watching Trayvon Martin. I'm not thinking about tying the two together. I'm just like, that's bullshit, and I'm going to scream and yell. This is, you know, and then I saw them doing things. I'm like, this totally reminds me of what they do to us, you know? And then they start posting the pictures of him being a pot smoker. Now it's personal, like, motherfucker, I'm a pot smoker. Does it make it okay for you to shoot me? No, I'm not black. So, like, all these things are filling my head. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, I see what we need to do. I need to say, marijuana prohibition was always racist. Look it up. Look it up. It's truth. You know, it started out as a racist issue. So here, us patients or people that like to use it recreationally or whatever it is, you want to grow it, you have a relationship with the plant, or you're a provider, or you're a doctor, all these things are wonderful, or you want to make money off of it. But we're actually being pulled and sifted through social currents and revolutions, and we're somehow part of it. Watch how we're going to be part of this global warming thing. Yeah. This is like the killerest fucking surfboard somebody ever gave you, and you're just like, you know, you're handling it. You're not falling off the wave, man. You're the fucking, what was the guy used to be called with the striped trunks? I can't remember his name. Anyway, it was this guy that used to hit the big waves, and he was a haole. He was a white guy. You know, the bull in Hawaii, right? And he would just set his feet, and there would be a gigantic 2-story building behind him, and he's just like, grrr. It's not a problem. It's an opportunity. It's not a monster coming to get me. It is the way I convey myself across the beach. Like a mighty warrior, you know. It isn't a monster, it's my pet. If you watch some of those videos, they are, holy shit. Watch some of those old 60s videos of those guys hitting big waves in Hawaii, and you will pee. I can't believe that. And those boards were made of wood. And when you see them just tumbling over like logs, you just go, holy. Well, anyway, our marijuana experience has been very much like that. It's like we grabbed onto a star, you know, something that's just passing through all these situations, and not glomming onto it, but it's a natural part of it. Somehow, like, hello, I'm here. How can I help? Yeah. Or be a detraction, you know, a detraction, because they start talking about, oh, look at these, you know what, potheads. They're dumb. You know what, that's oh. And they make people do crime. I think there was even like a Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers little one-page cartoon where they're showing a film, and it's a old woman walking down the street, and they're like, pot smokers will hit you over the head and rob your purse to get their weed. And they're showing the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers as crazed drug addicts. It's just hilarious. It's not, they're goofs. You know, that's like the original Big Bang Theory for LSD and marijuana heads. Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers is like the original Big Bang Theory. All right, I tied that together. All right, so I was going to end on that because I thought that kind of brought us along. Here we're talking about where the hell's the DEA? Well, I'll tell you where the DEA is. The DEA is shitting its pants. And now I know why. Because over in Russia, Putin said, fuck you. You're getting too big for your britches. Bip, bip, bip. You know. And then when they tried to argue back, they got bipped some more. you know, and they get absorbed. That's the beauty of this, is they don't go into the street and they don't have jobs. They get absorbed into the next system that's going to decide how to handle this, and it may not be the way they want. This is another example of who moved my cheese. You know, things have changed. What are you going to do about it? You're going to sit there and cry in cheese station 1 or whatever, where there's no more cheese, or you can get up off your ass like every rational fucking being on this planet and go find a new source of happiness and finance, and because this has run out on you for whatever reason. I know what reason, because it was wrong, but it drug too much from our society, money and human cost. But if you're in this, you need to look around and say, hey, this cheese station is running out of cheese, and I'm going to have to think about going out into the maze to go find another cheese station, another way to make money, another way to serve my community that does not involve something that is seriously not working. You know, once that glitch has gotten in there, that virus, that malware has gotten into your system, and you've allowed it, it corrupts the system, corrupts the hardware, crashes the system, blue screen of death for your DEA. You should have just handled your own shit instead of pointing the finger at everybody else and using this as an opportunity. But who could blame you? Sharks exist. That's the way it is. You know, it's really our fault because we gave you the opportunity, and we just have to realize that if you create an opportunity, you can't blame sharks for coming and hunting in that, because you created the environment for them to do that. It's really our fault, and we can change it. Okay, so you say hi and goodbye, and I'll see you tomorrow. Had a lot of really interesting conversations the last few days, big heady ones. I even saw another fabulous Pokemon video where the guy went out and he's asking people, are you playing Pokemon? Are you playing Pokemon? Are you playing Pokemon in New York City? He's like, I have never fucking seen anything like this. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. And it spells something weird for the future, and I'm not sure what it is. I was saying, okay, let's say the national parks have it. You go visit Yosemite or Sequoia or, you know, Arlington or something like this. And instead of them going, hey, don't go catch the Pokemon, they go, hold your phone up and you will see the people that are buried here. You will see their stories. You can interact with it. You can leave your message here in a virtual space. Suddenly, the Vietnam Memorial and stuff starts to become like, a magical place where you go, you know. It's not just, oh, look, there's a statue here. There's a statue I can interact with. We were saying, when we're wearing the things on our face, we'll just be like, grab, move this, doing things. And then people won't even know what the hell, or they'll see it, or they understand, but they don't see what you see. Just the same way we used to see people walking around talking on their phones, and they look like crazy people. They're talking in the earpiece you can't even see. And they're just, yeah, Bob, that's great. Okay, that's fine. You think they're crazy. Now you see crazy people, you think they have a phone. That's somebody else's joke. Seriously. This is going to be interesting. I hope I get to see. I'm going to try to hang out and see as much as I can. I'm hanging in there. I'm going to take care of my health and stuff because I really want to see what's coming. It's as far as I can get into it. It looks amazing. I wish Isaac Asimov could have stuck around for it. But he was pretty smart. He could project ahead. And I know a lot of people in science and stuff gave him sort of a peek-see at the future because he was a futurist. It was kind of like a thank you to him. I'm sure that he had some kind of inside information about robotics and stuff in his time just before he passed away. Just another one of our amazing thinkers, kids should know about, kids should be taught about. Look to the future. Try to figure out what's going to happen, and you get to decide what it is to be human then. It's going to be your time when we're all gone, or almost all gone. just like it's coming to be our time now. And it's all cool. And it's a story that's been played out many times, and it just gets, it's the same thing, but more interesting. Now we got robots and virtual reality, and yet there seem to be like so many old tales and myths that have told us how to behave, what to look out for, what mistakes not to make and everything. For even a virtual reality, because they weren't sure what reality they were seeing through their eyeballs. And yet, they're drawing on cave paint, doing cave paintings and throwing spears at it. That's virtual reality. They weren't sure. So it's just part of what we've been doing the whole time, and I just can't wait to see where the hell we're going. It's going to be amazing. So I've had all these really super mind-expanding kind of conversations with watching people react to Pokemon Go. Can't wait to see a actual reaction video like from the Fine Brothers, from elderly people or something to Pokemon Go, and see what they have to say about it. Because I'm like, wow, you just created a whole bunch of stuff. That means you can have a virtual mansion. Okay, here's what I'll end with. There's a set of 3 Japanese ghost stories that are unfinished in a movie. I can't remember what it's called. It's like Rashomon or something. Can't remember what it's called. Maybe that's not the right name. I have no idea. Anyway, famous old, 50s or 60s Japanese movie about these 3 ghost stories that are unfinished. Well, one of them is a guy who finds this palace with a beautiful girl who invites him in and befriends him and is feeding him and falls in love with him, and he's coming up to the house. I can't remember. He's like playing music for them or something like that. And they just love him and they accept him and they're doing all these wonderful things. And he comes back to town and he's looking weaker and more tired, and his eyes are starting to get dark and he's looking more hollow in the cheeks. Everybody's like, what the fuck is going on with you, man? He's like, oh, I met this princess. Everything's going great. There ain't no fucking castle. This bitch is like some kind of ghost demon that's like sucking his brain. And he goes there and thinks that this shit is all existing, but it's not, because she's fucking with his head, right? And he's just all too willing to believe it, because she's like, oh yes, you're so like handsome. And when in actuality, she's like, and so I can't, you don't know what happens, because none of these ghost stories finish. There's no ending to them. So they just imply things and kind of leave you to figure out the ending. Well, I think our world could become something like that, where if you're not very careful, you could end up thinking you're in a palace and being lavishly treated, when in fact you're being sucked and drained of your attention, and your energy and everything, and wasting it in this area, when in fact you should be dealing with the real world. You should be dealing with the world of the living, not the world of the dead, or the fictional, maybe. I don't know. But whatever, it just makes you start thinking all these thoughts like, wow, this is going to be such a trip. Boy, I wish we had some really good science fiction writers who could just take shit like this and, do something amazing with it. But it seems like a lot of them are dead now. All right. So, once again, let you go. Sorry I kept you so long. Adios.